I can breathe. I didn't for most of this game. For most of this game, I was at my computer watching the game, nervous. And I was nervous right off the draw because to open up the game, it was really quite open. And I thought open play actually favors the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I still do. If it's a matter of who's got the more talented team, I think things are pretty even. And if you're going to play that fast, wide open style, I think it favors Toronto. And the play was in Toronto's favor in that period. Now, where this gets ugly and what Toronto media is going to be tearing everybody apart over, there were a number of players that had a good series that did not have a good Game 7. First period, Joachim Nordstrom scores from Grzelcyk and Kuraly. I said Sean Kuraly coming back was major for the Bruins, and people are like, Kuraly? No, it's not. No Bruins fan would have said that, so I forgive people who may not realize Kuraly is major in big games, and today proved it again. Marcus Johansson then scores unassisted to make it 2-0. But the interesting thing is, there were no penalties in that first period, and Toronto outshot Boston 12-11, and it felt like they had the better opportunities. The difference was Rask made a few big saves, and Freddie didn't. And again, Freddie Anderson had an amazing playoffs, and I'm not throwing him under the bus, but you are going to hear the media doing that this summer. Second period, Toronto in complete control. Absolute complete control. That's why my notes start getting really, really intense. Tavares scores from Ennis to make it 2-1. And Toronto absolutely swarming that net. Boston Bruins doing everything they can to keep control. They couldn't clear the zone. It was looking like the last 10 minutes of the third period in Game 6, and it was making me really nervous. That's why I have here Leafs controlling the play and the dreaded 2-goal lead for Boston. Boston's had a lot of games this year where they have a lead and then they kind of squander it, and they don't necessarily play very well. And I felt like they did that in the second period. And I also put up here Boston undisciplined. There were only 2 power plays in this game. Both were for Toronto. And I thought Boston in both cases, they're penalties you can't have. So, and is that picky? Absolutely right it is. And then a fighty end of the second period, which I made note of because I thought that kind of favors Toronto. So they're down 2-1 going into the third. And while I'm sure the relief fans saying, great, we're dead again, I wasn't thinking that at all because every series is different. And I understand that coming out of this one, there are going to be people who say, no, this is the same. This is what happens. This is what happens. I really don't feel that way. I think where the Leafs lose this series is Game 6. Really, honestly. Going back to 2011, the Canucks don't lose when they lost Game 7 at home against the Bruins. It was when they didn't show up in Game 6 in Boston when they had that opportunity. For Toronto, they needed to win that Game 6 at home when they had the opportunity to put the Bruins out, and they didn't. So that fighty second period finish leads to a pretty strong third for the Bruins. So, what I didn't put on the board here. I'm still a little shaky. There's a reason I don't live stream that game. That, just too shaky, and then, when Kuraly scores that goal from Acciari and Nordstrom, I finally felt like I could kind of breathe. But no sooner have they scored than the whistle goes, and I thought it was because I thought the puck went onto the bench, and they said too many men against the Bruins. And I put always, because Boston, known for their too many men on the ice penalties in elimination games, and I don't like it. The good news is they killed it. They killed it. And I didn't feel any at any point in this like Toronto was going to score on that power play. That being said, Toronto had so many opportunities. So many opportunities that either were blocked by Boston defensemen that Tuukka made a great save on, or they were just a little bit off the net, or just a little bit off on their shots. This game, we're going to look at this score and people are going to see 5-1, and it really wasn't that game. So in 3 Game 7s against Boston, they lost 5-4 in overtime, 7-4 last year, and 5-1 this year. And I honestly, I don't see it. I don't think these teams are that far apart. That's why they're Game 7s. But they pulled Anderson with 3 minutes and 4 seconds left. And before they pulled Anderson, What was noticed at ice level by Craig Simpson is that Austin Matthews wasn't on the ice very much in the last half of that third period. Matthews didn't have a particularly strong game. And again, that's going to be the narrative this summer. I think all of the momentum that he had in this series and the fact that he scored and he played well, I think it's going to be overshadowed by Game 7. Game 7s have a horrible, horrible way of sticking with you. Look at Stamkos last year against Tampa and what's happened with him in Game 7s. Coyle scored from Krejci to make it 4-1. That meant I could actually breathe at a normal rate. And then Bergeron taps it in with less than a second left. I didn't know if they were going to count that. They did, because technically it went in. And that was as the clock expired. So Boston wins it 5-1. The scoreline is not indicative of the actual play. It is, and it's hard, because as a Bruins fan, I'm happy tonight. I'm not going to lie, I'm happy. Boston outshoots them 13-8 in the third. And really, in all honesty, this game was very, very close. Very close game. Rask saves 32 out of 33 for the winners. Anderson saves 27 out of 30 for the team that comes out of this game without a victory. Toronto, this was a setback. This was the year that I said they're going to win a round. I really believe Toronto was going to win a round. Then they match up with Boston. I'm like, I can't see them beating Boston this year. And I'm not sure what you do because, for people who say, well, they need to get bigger and tougher, they out-hit the Bruins in this series. They outshot the Bruins in this series. They played very well. They outplayed Boston in this game for the most part until the third period. Or I guess Boston looked at the score and they went, all right, we're going to bring this home. And that's where maybe the experience and the confidence goes over to Boston. The big line didn't get on the board. Bergeron gets the empty netter at the very end, but for the most part, Bergeron, Heinen, and Marchand were kept off the board. They kept Pasternak off that line. I was kind of surprised by that. We'll see if that continues into the next round. But it's rough. And looking at the stats, Gardner was a -3 tonight. I know he was a -2 in the first, and that's going to be your conversation. Jake Gardner is done as a Toronto Maple Leaf. I would be stunned if he comes back. 17 minutes and 17 seconds played. Travis Dermott, a -3 tonight as well. He'll get a pass from Leaf fans. He's younger. He's more inexperienced. 14 minutes and 15 seconds for him. Austin Matthews was a -3 tonight. 18:48 and Johnson -3. Now, I'm not sure if their -3s are from empty netters or not. So, but Jake Gardner is going to be part of this conversation. Sean Kuraly, a +3. Had an amazing game. It cannot be overstated what Nordstrom did, Kuraly did. Achari as well. Achari doesn't get an assist on that first goal, but he was key on that first play. And the depth is what did it for Boston. It was not the big stars. Toronto had an excellent plan to stop the star players of Boston. Boston also stopped the star players of Toronto with the exception of Tavares, and that was the one goal. So for Toronto, now you're going into a summer where Marner's going to get a big raise. Matthews' extension kicks in at a big, huge amount. And now it becomes more difficult. So for Toronto, this is kind of their best chance. Next year, even though the cap's going up, the cap hits on their players are going to go up, and that's going to make a big difference. So for them, it'll be very interesting to see what they do this summer. This is a horrible end. This is the absolute. This is a worst case scenario if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan that you lose in 7 against the Boston Bruins again. And that's why, yes, as a Bruins fan, I'm happy. But as somebody who picked Toronto, I picked them to win the President's Trophy. I picked them last year to knock out Boston. I also said that this was a team that was a cup contender adding Tavares when they didn't really need Tavares. I think we can look back, and the question becomes, is Nylander going to be gone? Nylander's not on the score sheet. Is Kyle Dubas going to go back on his promise to Nylander? Is he going to approach him in the coming weeks and say, sorry, Willie, this really doesn't work, and I need to fix the blue line, and your cap hit's going to be an issue. Does that happen, or does Kyle Dubas stay his course? And I've never seen anything to make me think he won't stay the course and stay with this core. Is this core good enough to win? And I mean, we're looking at a team that hasn't won the first round, but the question ultimately is, are they good enough to win a Stanley Cup? And I think the answer is no. Yes, they absolutely outplayed Boston tonight, but did they play like a Stanley Cup champion? Ultimately, no. They should have won that game 6 at home, and they didn't. And it is going to be up to their general manager to figure this out. Because first round knockouts 3 years in a row, that's it. You can't go into a year 4. That's why I think, and I said today that Babcock could find himself out of work at the end of this round. If if that's not true, so let's just say Kyle Dubas would not be of the mind to do anything with Babcock. We may very well be in a situation where Babcock himself says this doesn't really work for me. I'm not really interested in sticking around. It is tough in Toronto. The media, the fans, it can be a pressure cooker, and some players and some coaches thrive in it, and some don't. So we'll see. I thought it was nice that Chara ended up a +3 tonight. I thought Zdeno Chara played an excellent game. Again, while he is not the fleetest of foot, he is very solid in his positioning. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that Charlie McAvoy played a solid game as well. You have Chara, the immovable object, and you have the irresistible force that's McAvoy. And as long as those two are playing in sync, and as long as those two are playing their game, they're darn hard to stop. Rask, this was one of the best games I've seen him play in a while, and very, very impressed overall. So now we've got another Game 7 starting. At the time I'm looking at my clock, it says 6:54 my time, 9:54 Eastern. And yeah, the sun's still up because if you're in the States, the sun stays up later in Canada during the summer than it does in the States. But because that was a question somebody asked when it was still sunny at almost 9 o'clock at night, around 8:30 or whatever, in a video I did a couple nights ago. But yeah, this was a really, really nail-biting type game, and the score doesn't indicate that. So yeah, there are a lot of question marks with Toronto right now. A lot. And I don't know what you do. You are locked in with Tavares and Matthews. Does Kadri end up being traded? Does this come down to Kadri? Does his is the fact that Kadri doesn't play for the last 4 games since his suspension, does that change this enough that Boston wins it in 7 instead of Toronto? Does Toronto win it in 7 if Kadri's in there? And if not, and Kadri got himself suspended, does that mean he might get traded out of town? Lot of questions for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing right through. You just happened upon this video. And for fans of the Columbus Blue Jackets, I only wish you guys good luck. And if Boston loses in the second round to Columbus, it makes for a tremendous story for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I'm not gonna lie though. Right now, I really kind of like Boston's chances. Not because I don't think Columbus is good. They just wiped out Tampa in 4, but because I think Boston has a pretty solid franchise going right now. I think they're kind of on a roll. They faced elimination twice against Toronto and they fought it off. As long as they come out strong in Game 1, if the well-rested Columbus Blue Jackets don't jump on them in Game 1, I think it'll be quite the series. But either way, best of luck to them. I'll be doing a preview for that series tomorrow. And yeah, we're here. We're looking at one Game 7 down and another one to go. I love hockey. I know Toronto fans won't. Just take a couple of days. Just step away from it for a while. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys for all your support. Passing 84,000 yesterday and all that fun stuff. And the continuing upswing in subscriber numbers is fantastic. Thank you for all that support, and I'll talk to you again soon.